What's up YouTube, this is Kofi, also known as Cam Kodak. Today within this video, we're going to be going over how I color grade my Canon Log 1 footage and convert it to a Rec 709 or convert it to a way that will be usable so then I can upload it to YouTube or any other platform. Now, I want to go over my settings, but all the edits that you're going to be seeing is going to be done within DaVinci Resolve, and this is the free version so that anybody could basically follow these steps. But first, I'm going to go over the certain settings that I was using on my Canon camera. So first, I have the Canon EOS R, and I had the Sigma 18 to 35mm f1.8, and that f1.8 is going to allow a lot of light into this video. And just so you know that when you are recording, there's certain settings that you want to have Canon Log at. For instance, when you're recording at Canon Log 1, you want to have your ISO set to ISO 400. That is known as the native ISO when recording at Canon Log, but I do have some more recordings where I actually recorded at ISO 800, but we'll get into that later on within the video. But while I was recording on the Canon EOS R, I had my ISO at 400, I had my aperture at f1.8, and I had my shutter speed at 1/60th because I was recording at 30 frames per second. Now, all this footage is being recorded not on the actual camera, but through the Atomos Ninja V, and we're recording at ProRes 422 HQ so that we can get the most amount of quality and we can get that 10-bit depth as well so that we can be more flexible with our color grade. If you were to record on the Canon EOS R internally, you'd only be stuck at 8 bits, and it can be a little bit difficult when color grading, though since we're using the Ninja V with 10 bits, we'll be able to mess with the colors a whole lot more. I also do want to speak about lighting. You definitely can't really shoot a video without any type of lighting, and within this shot I do have one of my speed lights. These are actually one of my flashes for photography, but it does have a mono light, and I'm using that as basically a hair light on the back of my shiny head right here. But I also have a main key light that you can't see off to the side, and that is at 100%. That is the Godox ML60 bicolor. I have it set to a color temperature of 5600 Kelvin. Same with my monolights. Surprisingly, monolights, you can place a Kelvin temperature on it as well, so that was very helpful. So I was able to match both of the lights to 5600, and I also set my camera's color temperature to 5600 as well. Now, you could probably look at this footage and you think that, oh, it already looks pretty good, but technically speaking, this is still the log footage, and the log footage still needs some tweaking to be done. To be honest, I could leave it right over here and it would be perfectly fine. I could add a little bit more contrast and stuff, but usually that's not what you want to do when you are color grading, especially within DaVinci Resolve. And within DaVinci Resolve, with any type of color grade or any type of log footage that you have that you want to color grade, you usually want to head over to this part right over here. This is going to be known as your color grading tab, and within this tab we basically have some settings that we're going to be going over that's going to be very helpful with the color grade. Now, I'm going to show you the before and after that I already have set here. First, I'm going to take off this tab. This is the effects tab that I just clicked, but I'm going to grab all of these I already have preset, and I'm just going to hit Option D. So this is basically the color grade that I have at the moment. And let me go ahead and select all of these again. I'm going to press P. So this is the color grade that we're already seeing, and in my opinion, it looks pretty good. I'm also going to press Option D again so that you can see the before. I still have some lint in my hair right there, but we're not going to worry about that. And you can see how there's basically a night and day difference. And yeah, this is the color grade. Again, as you can see, we have some color within our shot, and it can basically bring more pop and more livelihood into your video. So we're going to get into the color grade. So now we're on our base layer. This is probably what you're going to be seeing when you are in DaVinci Resolve. And these things right here that are square, they're called nodes. You want to basically look at nodes as if they are layers on top of your footage. Now, this is going to be the starting point that you're most likely going to be be at with your Canon log footage, though this can work with basically any other type of log footage as well. First off, you want to make sure that you are perfectly exposed with your log footage. If you're not perfectly exposed, there are ways to fix that, though usually it can make your footage look a little muddy. Just make sure that you are referencing usually your manufacturer's or your camera's manufacturer's website to see how you perfectly expose with your log settings. I made sure to perfectly expose myself and my face with Canon Log 1, and that's how I'm basically going to be changing the colors and the exposure, contrast, saturation, temperature, all within DaVinci Resolve. But first, we need to do a color space transform. And to do that, we actually need to create another node. And just once again, the nodes are like layers on Photoshop or adjustment layers that you can do on Lightroom. So all I got to do is basically I can right click and add a node. But what I like to do is just press Option S. I believe you can also do Alt S if you're on Windows, and it's going to create another node. To be honest, one node is not enough. I actually like to start with 5 nodes, and I'm just going to show you my workflow when it comes to color grading as well, just so then the process can be a lot simpler and easier for you guys as well. So I'm going to press Alt S until I get about 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. That's where we are. So on the one that says number 6, but it's really R5, I'm actually going to right click it and then click on node label. This is how I'm going to label my node, and I'm going to call it CST. CST stands for color space transform, and that's going to be one of the effects that we apply to this node. So I'm going to go to effects. You can actually look for color space transform, or you have this search, I guess you could say magnifying glass right there. And you could just type in color space transform. It's located right over there. And I'm basically going to apply that to this one right here. And as you can see, as I dragged and dropped it, it brought all these settings right over here. So these are going to be the main things that we're going to be paying attention to: the input color space, the input gamma, output color space, output gamma. We want to make sure that we have an input of Rec 709. So we're going to be looking for that Rec 709. All right, and then our input gamma, this is going to be the most important thing. We want to make sure that we are matching what we recorded with. So I recorded at Canon Log 1, so I got to look for Canon Log 1 or Canon Log. As you can see, I have Canon Log 2, Canon Log 3. If you're on Sony and you recorded on S Log 3, then you'd be looking for something that is Sony S Log 3, and so on and so forth. If you're on Nikon, you do Nikon N Log, Leica L Log, Panasonic V-Log, but in this case I was on Canon and I was using Log 1, so I put on Canon Log. Now you already see that when I clicked on it, it changed the color, and we actually are going to make some more tweaks to that because we don't want it to look like so. So we want our output color space to be Rec 709 because we want the colors to be Rec 709 as well. Rec 709 is basically, how do I say this? It's the industry standard. So then whatever you see on your screen is also what's going to be matched on the TV, your phone, and all that jazz. This has been an industry standard for many years now. I know a lot of people are talking about, oh, we want HDR, and HDR is considered Rec 2020. But as you can see with HDR, it changes the colors a little bit too much, and a lot of TVs or a lot of devices out there really don't support HDR as they should. Rec 709 is the safest bet that we want to make. Now for the output gamma, we actually want to change it to gamma 2.4, though it depends on the workflow that you have. You could do it to gamma 2.2 or gamma 2.6, but once again, it really depends on the workflow that you have. I know for a fact that gamma 2.4 is going to be the best for my workflow, and it's also the setting that I had set on my Atomos Ninja V as well. So we already have our color space transform, and that basically takes us from the grayish look of a log footage and allows us to transfer it to more colors in a richer color that would be the same colors that you see from one device to another. Let's say you go from your phone to your laptop, or your laptop to a TV or a tablet. All those colors are going to look the same, and it won't look as gray and basically bland. So we have already set our color space transform, but we still have these other 4 nodes that we still need to work with? Well, actually, what I'm going to do is start labeling these nodes, and I'm going to label it in a way that will be very easy for someone who's just hopping into DaVinci Resolve and wants to mess with certain sliders and all that jazz. So the first thing that we're going to do, we have a number 1 right here. We're actually going to leave that blank. That's going to be like our base layer, especially if you guys work with Photoshop. You always know that you have a base layer. You usually don't want to work with that layer. That's just a reference layer that you can use later on. But we're going to hop onto the second node or second layer. We're going to right click on it, go to node label, and we're going to name it exposure. The second one is going to be, or third node, I should say, is going to be contrast. Fourth node, sorry, I clicked on the corner. Fourth node is going to be labeled as temperature. And then the last node or fifth node is going to be labeled as saturation. Now, once again, when you are color grading, having the CST or color space transform is going to be a universal thing that you want to do when you're color grading your log footage. But when it comes to exposure, contrast, temperature, and saturation, this is where it comes down to you. This is all your preference. So you don't have to match everything that I do within this editing, but this is going to be a good basis for all your future edits for your videos. All right, so we're going to head into exposure, and we're going to be basically touching on certain parts that you guys can see right over here. We have like a bunch of little tabs or a bunch of little icons that we can select. They do mean a bunch of stuff, though, to be honest, we're only going to be touching about like 3 or 4 of these. And the main one is going to be this color wheels right over here. We're going to click on that. And if you guys don't have your waveform located at the bottom right, we're also going to mess with that as well. How you basically change your scopes, and that's what I'm talking about within this bottom right corner, is that you want to click on here. You might have it on parade. You might have it on vector scope, which is perfectly fine. You basically want to switch it to waveform. And basically what this means is that you have your highest highs, which is going to be your highlights, and then your lowest lows, and that's going to be your shadows. Middle point is going to be, well, your midpoints, and this is usually where you're going to be having your skin tones around, but this is going to be a good reference that we're going to be using when we color grade. So first things first, I'm looking at this footage right over here. I'm going to press the letter P so you guys can see it in full screen. And I can already see that it's already a little overexposed, but I already like how the exposure is, so I'm not going to mess with the exposure that much. And if I were to mess with the exposure, a good thing I can do is just go to offset, and I'm going to go to this scroll wheel right here, click on it, and I could just bring it up. And as you can see, the footage starts to get brighter. But personally, I feel like I don't need that. I already like how the shadows within my beard is looking. I have shadows right over here within the blacks. And yeah, I really like how the shadows are looking. I really like how the highlights are looking as well, even though I most likely am going to be tweaking it later on. I still like how the exposure overall looks, but if you do have some darker footage, then you definitely want to go to your offset and try to mess with that exposure, and you'll see the change not only within the footage but also within your waveform. All right, next is going to be the contrast. Now, technically with contrast, you could just go to this contrast area right over here. It does start with a value of 1, and you can increase it by grabbing the actual number, like click and hold on it, and you can increase it by sliding to the right, or decrease it by sliding it to the left. Now, as you can see, if I slide it to the left, it actually crunches the waveforms. And personally, what you're doing is that it's grabbing the highlights, which is this top area right over here, and then your shadows right over here. And it basically what it does is either bring them as close as possible or allows them to be as far as possible. And personally, I don't like that. I feel like that can be very destructive, and I want to have more fine control of my highlights and my shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to contrast. I'm actually going to double click it so that you can reset it. Perfect. As you can see, our highlights are back at the top, shadows are back at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is mess with the highlights and shadows individually that's located at the bottom right over here. So my shadows, I could bring it up a bit. So I'm just going to click on the 0, click and hold, and I could just pull it up. As you can see, the shadows are being lifted. I'm just going to pull it up just a little bit. And once again, this is all going to be personal preference with your own video. And my highlights, I feel like I can definitely bring it down a bit because I feel like the highlights are speaking a little too much on my skin tone, especially on my forehead. I'm going to press the letter P so you can see it in full screen, especially on my forehead, a little bit on my cheeks as well. I feel like the highlights from the key light was hitting me a little bit too much there, even though I had perfect exposure on the camera. So I've already adjusted my highlights, I adjusted my shadows, and that's basically all I'm going to do within the contrast node. So because I feel confident with my contrast node, I'm going to move over to my temperature. And with temperature, this one's actually going to be straightforward because temperature is located right over here. Now, when you are recording videos with any type of camera that you have, you definitely want to pay attention to the temperature that you are in. 5600 Kelvin is the temperature of daylight outside, and that's usually a safe bet. Though, since I was indoors and I had controlled lighting, I made sure to set both of my lights at 5600. Now, some people, they may not like this warmer tone that may show within their video, and if that's the case, you can definitely switch that up. You can either switch that on the actual lights that you're using, you can switch to Kelvin on there, or you can do that within your editing software. And because we are recording in a 10-bit video format, we can definitely switch that around. So I can just click and hold on these zeros at temperature, and I could literally slide it all the way to the left, and it basically brings a cooler tone into the video. I do tend to like a cooler tone within my videos, but it really does come down to personal preference. And that's the beauty of editing videos that I find to be very similar to editing photos, is that you get to edit them however you want. You don't have to stick to one thing. You have to go out and buy someone's LUTs that they are in. LUTs, by the way, LUTS, is basically it's like a lookup table, or yeah, that is what it's called, a lookup table. And it's basically like a preset that you can put on your videos. I personally try to stay away from those because I feel like a lot of people are missing the fundamentals of color grading a video. And this, what I'm showing you right here, is the fundamentals of color grading a video, especially Canon Log 1. So you can change your color temperature when you are recording, especially in 10-bit video or 10-bit log format, and it gives you that flexibility without breaking any of the colors. This video is at 5600 Kelvin, like I said before, but if I ever wanted to change it, I can do so right over here within temperature, and I can even make it a lot warmer if I wanted to as well. If I want to reset it, I can just double click on the word temp and it resets it for me. I'm just going to change it just a tad bit, make it a little bit cooler, not that much. And then lastly, we're going to have our saturation. As you can see, this video, it could definitely use some saturation here or there. And there's multiple ways you can do saturation. I'm going to show you the basic way, and I'm going to show you a way that allows you to select certain colors within your video. Now, I was wearing a gray shirt, and that gray shirt can definitely be affected. It really depends on what type of shirt you're wearing, your skin tones as well. If you want to select certain colors, there is a specific way to do that. But once again, we'll touch on that later. What I'm going to show you is how to affect the saturation for the whole video. And how to do so is just heading over to that saturation node and then going down at the bottom where it says SAT, because it is sat, it is saturation. Right now it has a value of 50. You can just click and hold on to it. If you slide it to the left, you're basically going to be taking out saturation. It's going to look more gray, back to the way that we started. But if you click it and move to the right, you add saturation, you add color to the whole video. And this basically shows that I have basically blood running through my veins. And this is how it looks. And to be honest, I really like it. I really, really do. So let's say that I wanted the whole footage to have saturation, which we just did right now, but I wanted to select a certain color. So how we do so is that we actually go to our curves right over here. And you can also mess with the curves as well. But what I like to do is go to some of these icons. They're a lot smaller than the curves that you see right here. So right over here, if we click on it, we have hue versus hue. And then if we go to the next one, we have hue versus saturation. And this is something that I like to mess with as well. So hue versus saturation is going to give you basically this rainbow graph right here. And what I like to do is to bring my cursor to basically, oh gosh, my cursor is spazzing out a bit. But it's going to bring an eyedrop icon, and you can click anywhere on your video if you want to change a specific color. So for instance, let's say I want to grab my walls, right? I click on my walls, and if I click on my walls, it basically makes a point on that graph. Now I can click on that point and I can drag it up or down. If I drag it up, I'm going to increase the saturation like so. Or if I drag it down, it's basically going to take out saturation. And you're going to see that my walls are going to look a whole lot more gray. Just like so. So this really is down to your personal preference. Just know that when you do the hue versus saturation, it does select a certain color from the whole image. Now, if you wanted to select just a certain part of the image, I'm going to show you something that's even more advanced, I guess you could say. So I'm going to create another node just so that I can show you guys this. So here's my node. I'm going to label it selective. I can't spell today. Saturation. And what I'm going to do is go to this eyedrop icon, and I'm going to click and hold on a certain area. Let's say I just wanted to do my skin tones. So I'm going to click and hold on my skin tones. And it's basically going to highlight that area. You're also going to see that this area right here kind of made like a gray point. I can restart that so that you guys can see that. So say I just click on one area. It just makes like a mask of that area, right? And you can see that these values are selected over here. The saturation is selected, also luminance is selected. And if I wanted to clean it up some more, I sure can, but I just wanted to select on my skin tones. And what I could just do is that since this is a whole separate layer or whole separate node, I can just go to the color wheels, and then I can go to saturation, and I can literally just increase it, and it will increase the saturation within my skin. Now that is another way of doing so if you want to be very, very selective with your colors. I'm gonna press on the letter P, and I can see that my skin is looking very orange and bright, and that's not something that I want within my video. So I'm basically going to delete this node. And press the letter P, and I'm already liking how the footage is looking, and we're going to see a before and after of everything that I've done with exposure, contrast, temperature, saturation, and my color space transform. And we always want to do the color space transform last, and we want to make our exposure, contrast, and temperature, saturation adjustments first. Basically, this is the order that you always want to follow, but you can always add more nodes if you want to. But yeah, we're going to see the before and after of this footage. So this is the before. And this is the after. As you can see, we have a whole lot more color, a lot more contrast, and all that jazz. And this was my previous edit that you just saw that went around. But I really like how the footage came out. And once again, we definitely want to start with that exposure, contrast, temperature, saturation, and color space transform. But we want to apply the color space transform first, then jump back to our exposure, then work from the exposure to contrast, then from contrast to temperature, then from temperature to saturation, and then that should be it for your basic color grade on Canon Log or any type of log footage that you have. Well, that is my tutorial on how to color grade Canon log footage, especially Canon Log 1 on the Canon EOS R while using the Atomos Ninja V. But apart from that, you can still use the tips and tricks and the guidelines that I have within this video for any type of log footage that you have that you want to use on DaVinci Resolve. Apart from that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new to this channel, and leave a comment down below if this tutorial was helpful. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.